Protest at Gaza fence is mostly peaceful as both sides urge restraint. Nahal ounce, Israel. Tens of thousands of Palestinians returned to the borderland between Gaza and Israel on Saturday for a largely peaceful protest marking the first anniversary of demonstrations that have frequently led to violent clashes with Israeli troops. Despite efforts by both sides to minimize casualties, hundreds of protesters rushed the fence, some hurling homemade bombs, and 3 were killed. After that began when a rocket fired from Gaza wounded several Israelis north of Tel Aviv and ended after Israel spent a day. Neither side was eager for a new war, least of all Israel, which is. Egyptian intermediaries worked with both sides to keep the situation from boiling over, and Hamas, the militant Islamic group that controls Gaza, deployed scores of people in orange vests to keep most demonstrators at least 300 yards from the fence, the distance Israel had demanded as a buffer. The Israeli military had prepared for an escalation this weekend, moving tanks, artillery, and 4 brigades of soldiers to the Gaza border, but they mostly held their fire. There was some suggestion that Israel might offer concessions in exchange for a peaceful protest. Hamas official, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu made no mention of any deal but issued a statement thanking the military for the aggressive activity and massive preparations that helped bring about calm. While neither side offered specifics, it appeared that their efforts were having some success in curtailing violence. There were skirmishes at the fence, parts of which Israel had fortified in advance of Saturday's anniversary with steel plates topped by tall, heavy wire mesh fencing, and bunkers built atop large earthen berms, where hundreds of snipers were positioned. Tear gas canisters arced across from Israeli jeeps, and dozens of homemade bombs were thrown from the Gaza side. But the violence was. The Israeli military, while welcoming the reduced violence, took the de-escalation as proof of its assertions that the tone of the protests was entirely dictated by Hamas. It's clear that Hamas controls the level of violence, said Light Colonel. The year-long protest has had several objectives. It was aimed above all. Israel made a point before Saturday of cautioning its soldiers against taking shots that might hit unintended targets, the kind that Israeli officials acknowledged had, Rouzen al-Nayar, last June, one of some 196 people killed in the protests. In addition, the military said it was experimenting with new forms of non-lethal crowd control, including a device that essentially fires a rifle shot of sound at a target. But soldiers did use live ammunition on Saturday. The Gaza Health Ministry at the largest protest site, east of Gaza City, where nearly 10,000 people had gathered by early afternoon, participants lit campfires and brewed tea, a band played and a troupe danced the Deka, a traditional Palestinian dance. There were early signs this would be a relatively tame day, including a noticeably large presence of Hamas security and intelligence officers, and the placement of vast public tents some 700 yards from the fence, more than twice the distance from the barrier as on previous protest days. Vague promises of Israeli concessions were not enough for everyone, however. "We don't want the blockade lifted partially," said Whale, 45, a teacher. "We want it lifted," and Muhammad al-Suri, 34, who has a part-time job at a dessert shop and said he came to the protests to escape the suffocation he feels at home, said he was in the dark about what was happening. "We only hear that there are solutions," he said. "I will believe that." David M. Halpfinger reported from Nahal Ounce, Israel, and Iyad Abuila from Gaza City. Ibrahim El-Mug.
Raindrop, truck top, smoking, no cooking the hot pot. Fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up, open the park pot.